Hello everyone joining us for the Future Workforce Conference. My name is Josh Dreen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Dreen Media, a creative and consulting agency that designs employee-centric media. I'm the global brand and growth strategist at LeapGen, an HR transformation consultancy, and a startup advisor at the Harvard Innovation Labs, where I've been on staff for almost 3 years now. I also have a show on YouTube around employee experience that you should totally check out because it has a cool intro. I mean, just look at this thing, so definitely check it out. Funny story, actually. So I'm a father of 3 boys, all under the age of 5. My wife and I do our very best to keep them happy and alive. My wife is much better at it than I am. She's a trained marriage and family therapist. Don't ask me to cook more than ramen. As all parents, sometimes we make mistakes, but on one particular day, my parenting mistake went viral. We were at the trampoline gym and I saw this apparatus. It kind of looked like the Blob from Heavyweights, you know? You jump on one end, the person on the other end goes launching. So I call my 2-year-old son, Tristan, over and say, "Daddy's got a great idea." We get him in position. I say to Tristan, "Don't worry, Grandpa's going to catch you." Right?
Grandpa's gonna catch you. Are you ready?
I count it down. 3, 2, 1. You can probably guess what happens next.
3, 2, 1.
Oh my gosh!
Again in slow motion. Just for the record, Tristan wasn't hurt. He was just a little confused because he didn't know where he was. We showed him the video later and he couldn't stop laughing. Now, because he wasn't injured and it was kind of laughable after the fact, I shared it on my Instagram. A few days later, I start getting tagged in a random post. I go to check it out, and someone had reposted it, and it had almost 2.4 million views. I couldn't believe it. 2 days later, another account posted it at 112 million views. It went up on Fell Army, it went up on Fatherly, which is an account on how to be a good father, and then the memes began. And that was just social media. I started getting calls from production companies to license the clip. It was on the Today Show twice.
This is young Tristan. It's the best one we've ever done. He was having a blast. He was at the trampoline park when his dad decided to give him a little boost to help him out. Take a look.
3, 2, 1.
It was on Ridiculousness, a personal favorite.
Oh my gosh!
All right, come here. Come here.
And here I am responding to hundreds of thousands of comments on why I am a bad father. This is just the world that we live in. Our mistakes can be published for the whole world to see. And although this was just a laughable moment, there are several recent instances of corporate leaders getting called out by employees for not treating them well. Do you remember this guy who went viral for firing 900 employees over a Zoom meeting?
Your employment here is terminated effective immediately.
He was forced to take an indefinite leave of absence. Or how about Ellen DeGeneres, whose entire career came crashing down because her employees started shedding light on her toxic culture?
Staffers alleging a culture of racism, fear, and intimidation. BuzzFeed says 36 former employees also allege harassment and sexual misconduct from top producers.
This is not uncommon. For CEOs like Travis Kalanick from Uber, Steph Corey from Away, and Ron Gutman from HealthTap, they sell a vision of inclusion and well-being, but current and former employees are stepping up to say these leaders masked a toxic work environment and thus were forced to step down. Employees are the ones who are standing up and toppling high-powered CEOs. These are just a few examples of the power that employees are starting to wield in today's workforce. They aren't putting up with less than ideal work conditions and are starting to dictate the terms of their employment. And we're just looking at those glaring macro examples. Obviously, a lot about work has changed throughout the pandemic. Employers who once controlled the hours that you worked, micromanaged the projects that you were assigned, and threatened that they could find someone else to do your job, now have low visibility into your workflows, are struggling to identify the most important tasks, and cannot, for the life of them, find new talent. The power dynamic of I'm the boss and you're the employee and you have to do what I say has dramatically shifted in recent years, to the point where organizations like Korn Ferry are making bold statements for 2022. The last 24 months have changed everything for business, for leaders, for employees. Now as the dust settles, one fact becomes clear. Power has shifted from organizations to people, from profit to mutual prosperity, from me to we. Employees are now starting to ask human questions about the work they perform. Why am I doing this? What's it for? How can we do it better? Many are choosing to leave their jobs. The competition to attract new talent is growing fiercer than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Future Workforce Conference. In this presentation, we are going to explore the shifting dynamics of employee power, how employees are taking charge and owning the evolution of work, and whether organizations will view this change as an existential threat to their business as they cling to their old ways, or finally put people first and find ways to make work more human. Let's dive in.
Does the Great Resignation?
Some are calling it the Big Quit.
A third of the workforce has decided to quit this year.
Millions of jobs unfilled hit a 20-year high of 2.9%.
For a lot of people, the pandemic has changed their mindset about life and what's important to them.
Until I had a nervous breakdown.
I was already so anxious before the pandemic.
Full nervous breakdown.
This is the saddest interview ever.
Why do you think the Great Resignation is happening? I think it's a shot across the bow for the standard corporate culture because there are so many substandard corporate cultures.
CEOs are now realizing that it doesn't matter how much they push people. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to go to work.
Who can explain why this is happening? We've wondered how there can be so many open jobs.
I said get back to work! All right, you're fired. Get out of my office. I know, but if you persevere and work hard, you can achieve your dreams. Please don't leave!
Please take this off.
In order to understand employee power, we need to take a brief dive into its history. The Industrial Revolution began in 1760 and created the need for labor. Farmers traded in the plow for the higher wages of factory work. Soon, unions were formed to protect workers' rights. The first union was formed in 1777 in New York City by printers, carpenters, and shoemakers to fight for better wages and hours.
Let's choke them for crutches!
The Department of Labor was established on March 4th, 1913 by William Howard Taft to foster, promote, and develop the welfare of the wage earners, improve working conditions, advance opportunities for profitable employment, and assure work-related benefits and rights. Eventually, we settled into the 9-to-5 grind where work took the form of a contract. You do a certain amount of work for me, I pay you a certain amount of money. We have this guy to thank. Out of that was birthed the concept of discretionary effort, where employees would almost try to trick you into doing more work because it was fun, because you liked it, or wanted to get ahead. We began to shift towards finding intrinsic motivators for work, like career development or working for a cause, over the traditional extrinsic motivators of the carrot and the stick. And this all gave rise to the rather short era of employee engagement. We watched tech giants like Google and Apple give perks like free food and hot yoga. Patagonia offers childcare and allows you to bring your dog to work. Individuals were finally getting a voice by completing self-reported survey data. And then something went terribly wrong. Employers learned that ping pong tables in the break room weren't that important to employees. And that brings us to today. Welcome to the era of employee experience design, where employers want and need you to be happy, so they ask you how you are feeling, and they are quick to implement that feedback. They pivot hard when you are unhappy. It's about considering all the elements of your life and designing a positive experience. A lot of you might be saying, yeah, our companies are definitely not there. I know, but we're getting there. Let's keep going. The pandemic was an unprecedented event that pushed companies to evolve faster than they ever had to imagine. Remote work was forced on every company, whether you were a skeptic or not. Some forward-thinking companies were prepared. For other companies, they burned their people to a crisp, trying to get it together.
People are still fried out from the pandemic, and the mental health industry grew by 11% last year, so they're looking for online coaching and support just to get through the day.
The lesson that we learned from the pandemic: companies must be intentional about how employees are experiencing work at their organization. Not just when they are at work, but how work affects all the other elements of their lives. Empathy and compassion came into the forefront of leadership for each individual situation. And if a company missed the mark, employees walked. So what is employee power? And how has the pandemic shifted that power to employees? My good friends at Forrester, James McQuivey and David Johnson, discussed the changing power dynamics of work. David has a powerful definition.
I believe it's the 800-pound gorilla of employee power. It's the choice that each one of your employees makes every single day about, and maybe several times a day, about whether or not to give their organizations or their manager 100% of themselves or not. And there are many things that cause us to hold back, that cause us to burn out.
All right, let's take a step back real quick. When you break it down, there are three main categories of employee power. The first is established power, whether it was granted to an employee in the form of a title or earned through their developed expertise. The second is collective power, the unionization of the workforce, the aggregate of employee experience. This is where you see employee groups like at Walmart staging walkouts or stirring up social media, etc. And the third, and arguably the most important, engaged power, or the choice an employee makes to give 100% effort or not every day. The loss in productivity is practically immeasurable. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, I want to address this argument that can still be made that yes, employee power has taken off to a degree, but it has limitations because managers can still fire an employee. They still have to tell them what to do. They still manage their workflows. Yes, that is true, but look how things shifted during the pandemic. They have less visibility into employees' day-to-day life, and it's getting harder and harder to hire top talent. Companies are rethinking their power play. We'll just hire someone else because employers are starting to realize that keeping employees happy is the single best strategy to retaining employees. Surprise. What is more pressing for organizations to figure out right now is that their employees get to decide for themselves if they're going to give 100% effort or not. Like, how do we discover that? I mean, there are a lot of outward measures right now of whether employees are happy or not. Just take a look at the Great Resignation. But what scares me even more are the things that are hard to measure. Like, are employees actually giving their best effort at work? Are they motivated to do that? And if not, why not? And how do we solve for some of those issues? The real fact here is that employers need to be in tune with their people now more than ever, or else their people are going to continue to underperform and leave the organization and not have a great time. And where does that leave these companies who are having a hard time adapting? I want to share with you, for the rest of my time with you, the 4 facets of employee power. The power of withholding information, the power of withholding effort, the power to subvert culture, and the power to whistleblow. Let's jump right in. The power of withholding information. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you took an employee survey? When was the last time you enjoyed taking an employee survey? It sounds ridiculous even saying that out loud. How about this? When was the last time you provided feedback to an employer because you knew deep down that they were using that data for your benefit? Probably never, I'm gonna guess. But answer me in the comments right now if you've ever done that because you know that the organization has your best interest at heart. I personally believe this is the flaw in the employee engagement survey industry, which by the way is worth $878.3 million. They can't control for honesty. And why should employees be honest? I mean, what's in it for them? So they can be pinned down as a detractor? I don't think I've ever met someone who truly believes that this survey is anonymous. Nobody. So how do they respond? We're going to bring James McQuivey back on to nail this one for us.
People are not experiencing survey fatigue. They're experiencing inaction fatigue.
Oh, brilliant.
You gave them feedback and nothing happened. So guess what? Next time you survey them, are they going to want to give you feedback? No.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. That we really think you could actually interact with your employees. Now, smartly, it can't be a 3-hour survey, but you can interact with them and listen to them more frequently as long as they know that what they say is going to be useful, is going to be acted on and interpreted. And so the executive who's at the end of the year says, we did our annual survey of sentiment and here's how we scored and here's how it compares to last year. Good for us. That's not listening. Listening is saying, we heard some dimensions that came out of this year, this quarter, this month, this week's survey, and here's what we heard, and here's what we think this means. So you don't even say, we now know what it means, and now we're going to solve that problem, right? Because that's the executive from 2000, 1990, 1980. You're going to say, here's what we heard, here's what we think it means, and here's what we're going to be watching and doing over the next month to see if we can address that. So you start a collaborative dialogue with your employees, and that leads them to say, in 2 weeks, I better respond to the next survey because I want to help them in this journey of improving what it is we're doing.
When I was a student getting my master's degree, my co-founder and I were building a startup out of the Harvard Innovation Labs to pioneer sentiment analysis in real time. The concept of employee surveys just didn't make sense to our generation. We're used to constant, immediate feedback, like from our social media posts or Amazon reviews dictating the products that we purchased, all the way down to like slacking instantaneously to get an answer from someone. So what is the yearly or quarterly survey even going to do for us? Give me a snapshot of how I'm feeling in that particular moment? It's tone deaf, it's inauthentic, it's inorganic. In terms of a relationship, it hardly feels like any I'd want to be a part of. You ask me how I'm feeling only when it's convenient for you. The point I'm trying to convey is leadership often has no idea how employees are really experiencing work. And the only way they find out is by asking employees. The pandemic produced so many stories of employees leaving the organization en masse, and management had no idea why. There is a reason why employees are not happy right now. And they're willing to tell you as long as you use that data for their benefit. If you can't do that, they're not going to be honest with you, and you're going to continually have this problem. The shame game doesn't work anymore. As my colleague Ryan Malkus from LeapGen remarks,
there's an emotional shift that's happened with, like, when we think about quitting. So I just wrote down, it has been for a long time the notion of I quit, I failed. That is not true today. It's true now what is true is I quit, you failed. So employees don't shame themselves nearly as much as they used to. There's still a lot of self-shaming happening, unfortunately. But where before, I didn't want to quit because I didn't want to be looked at poorly by others. I didn't want to look like a failure. The world we live in today is when an employee quits, they're saying, you failed. I quit, my employer failed. And there's a lot of power in not shaming yourself.
This is power. Employees can withhold information about their experience. Employers who don't have a pulse make blind decisions that detract from the employee experience. Which brings us to number 2, the power of withholding effort. The Great Resignation, the Big Quit, the Great Discontent, it's a fascinating study. A recent Gallup poll found that 55% of Americans are looking for a new job. Quit rate is the highest it's been in decades at 2.7%, and a whopping 38 million workers quit their job last year. Employers are offering crazy perks just to find frontline workers.
We're all able to take a step back in the last year and spend more time doing other things and really question the value of what we're doing at work. A number of people have made the decision, I need to make a change. I need to simplify.
And even with all these data points, the Great Resignation is merely an outward expression of something that scares me even more. Right now, there are employees who are burned out, stressed, overworked than ever before, and a large portion of them are preferring the unknown of employment to their current working environment. There's a vast majority of employees, however, who do fear unemployment and are not going to leave the company. So in order to survive, that only leaves them with one option, which is to scale back their efforts. They don't do their best work. They hide their performance from their boss, and it is so easy to do in today's work environment where workflows aren't visible. They underperform and over-report their efforts. This is not a new problem. Employees have been trying to do the bare minimum for a long time, but the default traditionally has been for managers to micromanage and keep them honest. Post-pandemic, The default needs to be designing journeys for employees that are exhilarating, imbued with purpose and meaning, with a little dash of FOMO. We need to be creating experiences that they want to have. And it's doable. It's hard, but it's doable. The decision that employees make to not give their 100% on a daily basis is the power that they have over employers. And employers need to learn how to unlock that 100% in a new way. Number 3 is the power to subvert culture. In a past life, I was a youth motivational speaker. I would travel the nation speaking to middle and high schoolers, consult with leadership on school culture, and run parents' nights to teach them how teens are using technology. One of the most interesting and beneficial meetings that we would do was sitting down with the student leaders. I would dismiss any adult with authority out of the room. I would sit nice and close and say, "All right, kids, tell me what's really going on." And because I was an outside source and they trusted me, we had deep conversations. I was always impressed with their honesty. Students in today's world can say and do whatever their teachers and the principal asks of them. But then they can turn right around and do whatever else they want on social media. And what I found is that there's a huge disconnect from the culture of the school to the subculture of social media. This is Mr. Pratt. You guys like this guy? Yeah! I mean, that's power, isn't it? That they can say and do whatever they want behind closed doors. To have students deliberately subvert the culture of the school, like, it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do. Whether you like it or not, the same thing is happening at your organization. In the foreground, employees are encouraging and positive. They're on board with your culture initiatives, but in the background, they're slacking each other and saying this will never work. And to be honest, most likely, managers are blind to these conversations.
61% of leaders say that they are thriving right now in the current conditions. That's a full 23 percentage points above the average worker. And so we get the sense that there is really a disconnect going on.
The challenge that leaders of today have now is to draw the background conversations into the foreground and have real and authentic and transparent conversations with your employees. Create a safe environment through honest chats and action to back you up. Here's my challenge to you. Have your manager spend 90% of the next meeting on the touchy-feely kumbaya work and watch employees open up. The goal should be to remove any emotional barriers that they might be experiencing to do their job well. When employees feel heard, appreciated, and equal, when they feel empowered because they know what they're doing, they will naturally do the best work of their lives. All right, let me just say this. Leaders think they are in control when they declare what culture is. But culture adoption is where the power is. And that comes from employees taking part, not only in hearing it, but in the forming of the culture. Invite them into the room where it happens. Halfway through my leadership meetings with teens, I would invite the leadership back into the room, and we'd sit down with the students and decide what should the culture be. Because students don't like the negativity that they're experiencing. It doesn't feel good to them. And if they are working hand in hand with leaders, they are more willing the next time to go on social media and say, that's not right. That's not what we do here. And that is powerful. And finally, the power to whistleblow. I know that we kind of started here with employees toppling powerful CEOs, but those stories get a lot of recognition and they're kind of the macro version of it all. What about the small, everyday ways that employee power plays out? It's playing out right in front of our eyes. And to be honest, the exact same thing happened in the customer experience arena. Like, if you think that in today's world, you could just put out a product on Amazon and say, it's a good product, you should buy it, you will be sorely disappointed. And you erred when you said should. Companies have no choice but to be obsessed with the customer experience because it's the only way to sell nowadays. Asking customers for feedback, using test groups, spending millions of dollars on brand positioning, the look, the feel, the experience. And yet somehow when it comes to employee experience, we think we can just put out a strong employer brand to recruit and forget about the rest. Customers whistleblow their experience all the time through reviews on Amazon. I mean, does anyone even buy a product that has 3 stars? It's because we know that experience probably won't be great. Websites are another great example. We don't trust websites anymore. It's because we know it's the company's best foot forward. It's their most polished face. But what about the real experience? For example, I used to live in Boston, and I am definitely not going to order food based on how their website looks. I mean, that's all pretty and nice. What I really care about is the Yelp reviews. I'm shopping an experience and I want to see how people experience the food before me. If it's not a great experience, then the customers are going to tell me and I'm not going to buy food there. Similarly, employees now see your outward expression of the company brand. They know it's posturing. Instead, they head to Glassdoor to see what others have experienced at your job, and they talk. They will get on LinkedIn and find employees on the team that they can actually talk to. You can't fake it anymore. There is way too much transparency. The only way forward is to be real, to be authentic, and to actually live your values and have honest conversations with your employees. No more putting up this facade of employer brand and say, join us, we're really cool, and then you get on the inside and realize it's terrible. That just doesn't cut it anymore, and employees see that. The point I'm making is, if you want to hire top talent in the most cutthroat market of all time, design better experiences throughout the entire employee lifecycle. A couple ways to be more transparent. Better communication. Use video. Some of our best clients just want to produce video communication to employees. Reach out. We can totally help you. #VlogBoss. Be transparent. When someone shares negative feedback, it's probably 10 times worse than you think. Dig into it. Sit in that uncomfortableness. And authenticity. Employees can see right through your facade. So be real. Whoo! All right. In conclusion, employee power is on the rise.
Is it really rising, or is it just changing forms?
It is on the rise.
Well, I'd like to make a case that maybe they've always had power. It's just that our understanding of that power and the channels that they have to work with are changing.
Just as the customer experience revolution was birthed out of the age of the internet, the employee experience revolution is happening now with the adoption of hybridization, decentralization, and a growing gig economy. Employees have plenty of high-paying options for work. They are being overworked during the pandemic. They want their work to mean something. As a result, millions of employees are quitting, and millions more stay at work but stop caring. The CEO of LinkedIn, Ryan Roslensky, has called it the Great Reshuffle, meaning employees are just jumping from role to role. I disagree. I think it is much, much more than that. People got burned in their last work relationship. It's like a bad ex, which means that they are much more wary of the next boss and much more intentional about their work. They've had time to think about what they want from life and work. Life is short, it's fragile. There's no time for a work relationship that stresses you out or promises happiness later. The most progressive companies are examining the intricacies of daily employee life, trying to understand their pain points and bottlenecks. They are discovering which hours they work best and when the kids need to be picked up from school. They are identifying patterns and eliminating noxious meetings and outdated technology. They are sitting in empathy with employees to hear all of their non-work related drama, all with the intent of designing a better employee experience, because they know that employees are actually in control. They can't afford to lose anyone. They can't afford to burn out half of their staff. They can no longer afford to not know how employees feel. All right, I'm done. I could quote research at you all day about how happy employees are productive employees. But let's just use some common sense here. Employees hold the power. Let's create work they love. Thank you so much for watching. Dream Media produces employee-centric media. If any of you need any help with your consulting, or if you just need to create media assets around employee experience design, please reach out. We'd love to help you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to turn you over to Real Josh now for some Q&A. Thanks everyone, enjoy the rest of the conference.